Okay. So I was really happy to participate in this meeting today because I do have some new secrets that have come out in the research in the past couple of years, and even some that have just come out in the past few months. And it's a great time to talk with families and people that work with families, and as well as teachers and people that work with teachers, right? So I'm Karen Nemeth, and I am a former board member of NJTESOL-NJBE and a special interest group chairperson from the national NJBE and the steering committee for the interest section at national or international TESOL. So I've been working with TESOL and NJBE projects and initiatives for a long time. And I think that this connection with families is such an important part of our work. And over the years, I have written a lot of books on this topic about supporting young children who are multilingual learners, and worked with other authors and other kind of projects, including this one. This is an ebook with audio recordings that provides everyday activities that families can do together at home to support their child's learning in both English and Spanish. And so I was really interested in one of our bilingual award winners today talking about that whole experience of being at home with a family that only speaks Spanish and then going to school and only speaking English, and how difficult it is to translate in your own mind when you're doing a school assignment, right? And the reason we wrote these books was because my friend Ana Lomba is originally from Spain, and we were really keying into this idea that it's not as simple as writing it in Spanish and then just going to Google Translate. And it's not as simple as trying to write it in English and then translating it into Spanish. That the best way is to co-create, to work together. So you're writing it at the same time so that the Spanish speaker and the English speaker can say, I don't have a way of saying that. Like we learned in some of our early childhood work, that in English, we're all the time describing 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds as toddlers. But there isn't really a word for toddler in the Spanish language. So if you just think, I'll just write whatever I want in English and somebody will translate it in Spanish, it doesn't always work. And we have to really think more deeply. And so I thought that our award winners really gave us some insights about that. And it helps us to understand what we need to do to support young children.
Karen, Karen, I'm so sorry, Sonia. I just wanted to let you know that the participants know that if there's a time that after maybe 4 slides or 3 slides, if you could just stop and maybe I could in Spanish summarize.
Oh, is that your plan? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if there are any speakers of just Spanish on this in this room, but for anybody who would need that translation, I'd be able to make that summary after about 4 or 5 slides or something like that.
4 or 5 slides, but I talk a lot, so
maybe. Yeah, well, I'll do the best I can.
But I know at least one participant selected the captioning. So there's that available as well. Would anyone like to type in the chat if they would like?
That's what I'll say that right now.
Hear it?
Si alguien necesita una traducción, yo podría traducir después de cada, no sé, 4 o 5 slides, no sé cómo ahora se dice slides, podría traducir o resumir lo que ha dicho Karen. Sin embargo, si no les hace falta eso, si me lo pueden decir en el chat, si alguien necesita eso o no. A ver si aparece en el chat, si necesitan este servicio, si no, me callo y dejo que Karen haga su trabajo. It looks okay, Karen, so far. Nobody's written in the chat that they need me to translate. So
Okay. But I'm happy to, take a pause whenever you think, when, anybody has
if there's a question in the chat, si hay una pregunta en el chat, yo puedo en este momento hacer ese resumen en español. Y si no, lo vamos a dejar. So if I don't see anything in the chat, we'll just keep going.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I brought a few secrets to early language success that we know from the research, and then a few strategies that you could use to make those secrets work for you at home or in school. And secret number one is that children do not learn language the same way that adults do. This is a really important thing that we've learned in the research. And it's a challenge because as an adult, you have a good idea of what helps you when you're learning a new language. And it's natural to think, well, if that helps me, it will also help my children. But it turns out that younger children's brain works in a different way, and they need different kinds of practice than the things that would help an adult, right? So, as you get older, you can take a language class. You can take language lessons to learn a language. And that's, kind of natural for high school students or adults. But it turns out that lessons do not work for young children. And I'm talking about preschool, kindergarten, even into first grade. And I'm going to explain why. But one of the key things was just demonstrated by Sonia, and she did not know she was demonstrating this. Sonia, when you said, when you were explaining that every few slides I could stop and you would translate, and you were saying it in Spanish, but you did not know the Spanish word for slides.
I do
right?
now. Yes.
Yeah, but that's natural, right? And
Yes.
that is what happens with young children, is even though they sound like they may be doing pretty well in English, they know some things in English and they know different things in Spanish. And so we always need to support their learning in English and in Spanish, because or English and whatever is their family language, because their brain has that information, and we have to build on what they know to help them learn something new. And so we know that we like the idea of celebrating two languages. We like the idea that in the future, this will create an advantage for children to grow up bilingual. But we also know that right now, today, that our young children need support in their home language as well as English to help them learn all of it better. So it's a social justice idea. It's an equity idea. It's a future idea, but it's also a very practical teaching concern right now for those children. Secret number two is that young children learn language by using language. They learn when they hear and speak lots of words. As adults, we can listen to words and think about them and remember them. But young children need to say the words in order to learn them. And so we often hear people say, oh, children are such sponges. But I don't agree with that. And I'll tell you why. Because I've spent a lot of time around young children, and I've seen a lot of sponges. And the truth is, I don't see too many young children that are willing to just lay around and soak up whatever comes to them, right? Young children are active learners. They are active. They are exploring. They are investigating, they are talking about things, and that's how they learn. It's not like just words wash over them and soak into their brain. Young children learn language by leaning in and trying new words and talking to their friends and playing alone and hearing stories and then talking about the stories. So one of the things that we have learned so much in recent years is that young children need more time to do the talking. And so we're going to talk about how to build that in and to help parents and teachers remember that teaching language doesn't mean sitting and listening to an adult. Teaching language means having interactions where there's adult talk and the child does a lot of talking and really uses those words. Secret number 3 is that young children's language grows when they have lots of experiences to learn new things. In the research, we call this background knowledge. There's a whole field in the study of language development that has shown time and time again that the knowledge comes first and then the language is attached to it. And boy, I have a great example of this in my own life that made me very humble. I'll tell you that. That when I had my first daughter, you know, my husband and I worked really hard. We were sort of competing. You know, I would play with her and say, Mama's here. Mama's going to feed you. Mama's taking care of you. But my husband would say, oh, Daddy's here. Daddy's going to play with you. Daddy's going to have fun with you. And my daughter's first word was cat, because she could understand and process so much of the language that was happening. But the thing that was the most interesting to her, apparently, was our pet cat. So she did not learn all these words and then learn what they mean. She first learned the meaning. She knew what the cat was. She knew that she wanted to touch the cat. She knew that she wanted to comment on the cat. She knew the meaning first, and then she learned the word to go with it. So the more experiences children have in their lives, the more knowledge they have, the more things they try and do and see and talk about. That's what builds their language. So it's not just about memorizing words, but it's about thinking of all the kinds of meaning, content, ideas, experiments, recipes, whatever you work on or play on with your child. That's what helps them learn language. And then they begin to associate the words with the meaning that they have acquired. I'm taking a breath here to see, Sonia, is anybody asking for?
No, it looks like the chat is empty.
Okay.
So not to worry.
Okay. Secret number 4 is that children learn language best during two-way conversations. Two-way conversations, a critical finding in the research. And, you know, this is difficult for those of us who work in education because we spend a lot of time teaching teachers what the teacher should say. And when people graduate with their teaching degree and they go to get a job, they somehow feel that they are only a good teacher if they're doing all the talking. But the research says that when the teacher is quiet, learning is really happening. When children are talking to the teacher or talking to other children. And so we really need meaningful two-way conversations to support early language learning. And two-way conversations, that's something anyone can do. And we focus a little too much on how teachers present information, and that makes parents feel like, I'm not a teacher. I don't have teacher training. I don't know how to teach language. But the truth is that the way parents interact with children at home may be the best way to support language. So when you are reading a story or planting seeds in the garden or going to the grocery store, engaging your child in two-way conversations gives them a tremendous rich background that they use to support their language. And if the child is learning a new language, then practicing, sometimes having those conversations together in the new language shows the child that you're not just giving them the assignment to learn the new language, but that as an adult, you are learning with them and talking about it, right? And then I added a little extra secret at the bottom of this slide, because for a long time, people have been wondering, when children sit passively in front of screens, does that hurt their learning? And for very young children, it turns out that that really does. That really is an important question, that children who just sit and watch TV without talking about it don't learn much. But if they are watching, for example, there's a whole bunch of research about Sesame Street, which is designed, right, to help young children learn by using the TV. But they found that if children just sit and watch Sesame Street, they don't learn as much. But if the children watch with an adult who is able to then talk to them and have that conversation about what they're seeing, those children learn a lot more from Sesame Street. So we see a lot of people worrying, oh, I don't want my child to have too much screen time. But there's a special feature of screen time that actually helps language development, and that is video chats. So when children Skype or FaceTime or something with a relative in another country, like, for example, my grandchildren, some of my grandchildren live in England, and most of my way of interacting with them is over FaceTime. And I read stories with them, and we make jokes together, and we have dance parties, and it gets a little silly. I'm glad we're not recording that kind of stuff on here, but it is fun, and it really builds my relationship so that when I do go to England to visit them, I'm really familiar to them. We have our sort of inside jokes and our songs that we sing. And one of the things that my daughter came up with her little one, he was 4 years old. And we were trying to think of things to keep him engaged, talking with me over FaceTime. And she said, well, Grandma, do you have any apples or oranges at your house? And I wasn't sure what she was asking. And then I started to catch on, and I said, well, yes, I have this apple right here. And I held up an apple, and she said, well, why don't you throw it at the phone and maybe it will come through to England? And so I threw the apple at the phone like that. And she said, oh, I hear something in the kitchen. I'll be right back. And so she ran in the kitchen, and she came back with an apple. And we had this game going back and forth where we pretended to send things back and forth through the phone to make that screen time really come alive. So we have learned that having two-way conversations in person is incredibly valuable for early language learning, but that having those two-way conversations across technology, if they are really responsive two-way conversations, are just as valuable. So having those interactions with someone who speaks another language or who speaks your family language really does help young children learn language when they're having conversations. Okay. So, and then the fifth secret in my secret list is when young children get a good start in their first language, they can easily transfer to a new language. Home language or family language makes a powerful foundation for learning English. And this is so important. We actually have research to show that if we push English too much in the early years, it makes it harder for young children to learn. But when they have a lot of experiences and conversations stories and play times and work times using their family language, they learn so much more because they understand so much more. And when they learn the meaning, it's much easier for them to then learn the same meaning in the new language. So all of the things that happen in the child's home language or family language create a solid start for them to learn English. And that's a really important thing that the science has shown us, that it is good for young children to have some exposure to English, but more English does not help them. More language, more talking, more experiencing, more conversations in their home language is what's going to make their English learning even more successful as they go on. Okay, so the science tells us that young children learn best with these 5 secrets that we talked about, with play, songs, and stories, when they do lots of talking with adults and other children, when they have interesting experiences that build their background knowledge, when they have two-way conversations where the child is thinking and talking and answering, and the adult is also responding and thinking and answering. And then we know that children learn language best when they have a great start in their family language. So these are the next thing I'm going to show you are some tips that you can use to bring these ideas to life. But I'm taking a breath because I know I said to Sonia, I do talk a lot. So if you have any questions or comments about your experiences, if you want to share them in the chat, and then we can certainly address that. And so I am not seeing the chat right now, so I'm just going to
I'm seeing it, and there's nothing in it right now. So you can, it says from someone that says, this is great information. Gracias. So,
okay, well, let's keep going, and thank you. Okay. Family language tip number 1. Get into it. Play games together. Plan times to use the family language, and then other times to try English. Get books in both of the languages. But when you get a book that has both languages, always read the story in one language at a time. So even if you have a book that has the words in English and the words in French on the same page, don't read English and French. Read the story all the way in French one time, and then another time, read the story all the way in English. And that's a good example of one of those things that you think would help you learn English and French with that story if you read them together. But young children don't work the same way, and they need the languages separate. Now, I brought this example. This is the Highlights magazine. You see the picture also on the slide. Highlights has a version for young children ages 2 to about 6 years old called High Five Bilingue. And all of the content in every issue, all the content is first in Spanish and then in English. And so Hotel Caracola, and then there's a story about this dog, and all of the parts that are in Spanish start in the beginning, and then you go through the pages, and then the English part starts. So it's all there, but it's separated. And this is a great way for families to read stories, but there's also games that they can play together. Like, how are these pictures the same? Or they'll have activities in the back that you can make, and they have the same activity with the instructions in English and Spanish, right? So this is one example. It models what the science tells us about how young children learn language. And it also gives in one place games and stories and activities that you can explore together. but you don't need a magazine like this. You can do these kinds of things at home. Another thing in these strategies, play games and get books in both languages, and then sing lots of songs and rhymes. And it's great to do those things in the family language and to do them in English. But make sure when you sing songs with children that you're using songs that they can really understand and use the words. And this is like a secret insider tip, because I see a lot of teachers teaching a song in Spanish, like they'll teach the song lunes, martes, miércoles. And in preschool, I always have questions of all the songs that you could sing in English and Spanish. Why do preschoolers need to know the days of the week, right? Is that something they use when they're playing? Do they use those words when they're running around outside? Do you ever hear a 4-year-old say, "Hey, friends, stop. Let's all talk about Tuesday"? No, they don't need the word days of the week. There are other songs that they do need, okay? And so that, not that they need, but there are other songs that have words that they do need, words that they use in their play or their experiences, like the wheels on the bus. When you live in an area where you take a bus, Wheels on the Bus is a really relevant, meaningful song. It has lots of words that you can use that children can learn in their family language and in their new language, right? So think when you're choosing songs and rhymes, choosing the ones that really give the child the meaning that's meaningful to them. And that's how they learn. Okay, that's family tip number 1. Family tip number 2, talk about what you're doing as you go through the day. Well, adults at home and adults in school do a lot of stuff. And it's a great idea to talk about what you're doing. So for example, we write things a lot. When you're at home, you write your shopping list, or you write a note, or you write a recipe or whatever. And at school, the teacher writes the attendance list or plans for the day. And we, of course, want our young children to get interested in writing. So we should talk about that. We should say out loud, "Oh, I have to write a shopping list because if I write it down, I can remember I need more potatoes," right? Or I have to take a minute to write this down because I need to tell the director who is present today in class and who is absent today. So I'm writing it down. While you're talking about what you're doing and you're giving meaning and words to the everyday things that are happening around. Also talk about things you see in your environment. And those of you who have young children, one of the first things they learn to read is probably the signs in the neighborhood, right? The signs for the stores or the restaurants they want to go to, or which one is open and which one is closed, right? So talk about the signs you see in your neighborhood, the things that are in your everyday life. And then the other thing you could do is talk about words. Like when you see a big word on TV or you use a big word, and you can explain what that word means in your family language and in English, and help the children make that connection. Really just talk about what words mean. It's such a simple thing, but anyone can do it. Okay, family language tip number 3, talk with your child when you're out and about. Comment when you're shopping, when you're taking a walk, when you're eating out, when you're at the library, when you go to the grocery store. There's so much to talk about. What's hot, what's cold, what are the different colors of things, what things do you like and what things taste really yucky, and what things go together to make something delicious, and what's something new that you haven't tried to eat. My goodness, you could go to the grocery store as a field trip and spend half the day there talking about stuff. And that's wonderful, rich, meaningful, and natural. language learning for young children, talking with the child about the everyday things that they see and experience and that are part of our lives. And that can be for a teacher as well as for a family. But also visit interesting places that add to your child's experience and background knowledge. What are the places that are available in your area? You know, when I was a young mom, I used to know where every playground was. And I would take my children because, you know, it's free and it gets a lot of their energy out. So we would find every playground we could find, large and small, and we would try them and we would talk about them and talk about how we got there and how to get home and how they were alike and different. And so it can be things like that in your community or in the area around the school. But it can also be, you know, interesting, a museum or a concert or a show or a movie, whatever you think will capture your child's interest to add something new and different. Take a walk or try different kinds of transportation, and involve your child in your hobbies and interests. Those are the things that you're passionate about. Those are the things you're interested in, and you have a lot to say. And children always enjoy being involved in the hobbies and interests of the adults in their lives, whether that's at home or at school. So these are ways to really build that background knowledge in the real life of the children. Okay, tip number 4, take time to have real conversations. And this is sometimes a challenge for teachers to have the time to have those real conversations. And it can be a challenge for families too. But we know from the research that this is critical for strong language learning, and that we have to just take a moment and really pay attention to each child. And what that means is expressing an interest, sharing your information or your opinions, asking the child what they think, giving them a chance to really think, what did this grown up say to me? What does it mean to me? What do I want to say about that? How am I going to say it so this grown up can understand it, right? Takes a lot of thinking and is like exercise for the child's brain. And so in schools, we are often advocate for teachers to keep an informal list of children that they've had conversations with, because you know how it is, even in your family. There's some children that really get your attention and talk to you all the time. And then you may have another child that's more quiet and more independent. And you realize, oh my gosh, I've talked to this child 10 times today, and this other child, I haven't even really had a chance to have a conversation. So think about making time, making notes for teachers, keeping a list of the children in your class and making a little check mark whenever you have a real, you know, conversation, going back maybe 4 and 5 turns back and forth, so that you can notice as the week goes on, maybe you need to work a little harder to find time for some children than others, right? We know for families what happens when your child comes home from school and you say, what did you do in school today? I don't care what language you ask that in. If you ask, what did you do in school today? What will the children say?
Nothing.
They said nothing. So we need to ask them more specific questions to engage them in conversations. Ask your child, who did you have lunch with today? Did you help anybody today? Who did you help at school today? What is something you talked about at school today? That kind of thing. And then invite your child to teach you something that they learned at school.
Aaron, just a second. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but there are more people coming into the room right now. I just heard, so I just want to make sure los que acaban de entrar en el salón, si hay alguien que necesita una traducción, si no entienden todo porque la presentación esta es en inglés, si necesitan que yo les traduzca algo, por favor que lo pongan en el chat, ¿ok? I just told them to put it in the chat if they need me to translate something for the new people that just entered the room.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, welcome everybody. Okay. So in this session, I talked about the top 5 secrets that we've learned from research about how early language works best for young children. And now I'm talking about tips that you can use to bring that research to life in your interactions with your children. And this slide is talking about different ways to have conversations. And the quote at the bottom of the page comes from well-known author Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, who said, "It's about having these fluid conversations around shared rituals and objects, like pretending to use the banana as a phone, or pretending to have morning coffee together. That is the stuff from which language is made." So she has really capitalized on her research to bring this message out that we don't teach language by talking to children. We teach language by talking with children and encouraging children to do a lot of the talking. So that is one example. And then language tip number 5, get a great start in your home language. When children learn lots of words and information in their family language, this creates the strongest foundation for them to succeed in English. They understand more. The family has a lot to talk about in the home language. The home language provides a very practical support for children to learn a new language. And then make learning English also a fun part of your whole family's life. Make learning English not like a requirement, because nobody responds well to that. I don't even respond well to that when it's a requirement. But when it's fun and we're interacting together, we're learning together, we will see more English being brought into the child's life. But when they have a strong foundation, learning lots of experiences and stories and conversations in their family language, you can see that that is what they need to get the best start in English. And so I always like to
Karen,
remember.
sorry, I'm asked for translation, so I'm just going to translate that last slide. People are asking now for translation, okay? Lo que acabo de decir, Karen, en este diapositivo aquí, que es muy importante el idioma natal. El primer idioma siempre es una ayuda, no es un obstáculo, es una ayuda para aprender el segundo idioma. Cuanto más sepan los niños en su primer idioma, cuantos más vocabulario tengan, cuanto más información tengan, mejor irá su progreso en inglés. Y también dice que deberían de hacer el aprendizaje del inglés, incorporarlo en su día como una cosa, una diversión, algo divertido que pueden hacer todos como familia. Okay, thank you, Karen. I'm going to do now, if you could just stop after every 3 slides so I can paraphrase.
And we have a video coming up that is in English and Spanish.
Okay, cool.
So that will help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This is an important slide because this is tells you the 3 things that you have to know about language. And if we support all 3 of these things for young children, we help them learn. So it's very simple. We need language to help us receive information, right? We listen, we read, we need to receive information and language, but we also use language to express, to communicate. We use language to say things, to sing, to write. And then the third function of language is what happens inside our brain when we use language to think, to organize new learning, to make sense out of things, to put things together. So when we're helping children learn language, we have to support all three of these things. It's not just about putting information into their heads, but also helping them express what they know and can do, and helping them think about things. So I'm going to pause there, Sonia, so you can say that, because I think the video will be coming up.
Okay, thank you so much. Lo que estamos diciendo aquí en este diapositivo, lo que estamos viendo es que las familias y los maestros pueden y deben apoyar estas tres funciones de un idioma. Que primero recibimos información, ¿verdad? Y esta información la usamos para expresarnos, para comunicarnos, para cantar, para escribir. También usamos esta información para pensar. Es algo que ocurre dentro de nuestro cerebro, ¿verdad? Para organizar la información, la nueva información, y para hacer sentido, ¿no? de lo que hemos escuchado. Entonces, estas tres funciones son muy importantes y es como podemos apoyar el aprendizaje de los niños. Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and now I'm going to try to show this video. This is an interaction between the mother and the child about what he did in school today, and how powerful the parents' interaction with the child is for learning. And so we're getting close to the end, but what you'll see is, first you'll see the child interacting with the parent and how the parent supports language. And then you'll see a teacher, and you'll see the teacher does it in a different way. And maybe the teacher talks too much, and maybe the parent is following the research. But to make this happen, I have to have confidence. And I put the link here. I put the link because if this doesn't show up in the recording, you can just use that link to watch the video yourself at another time. So here I'm going to try to show this video. Let's see. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to work now that I'm looking at my screen. Let's just see. Can you see, it says our chicks have hatched? Can you see it? Sonia, nod your head.
Yes, I can see it. I'm sorry.
Now I'm going to play the
Andy,
sound.
yo quiero saber qué es todo esto que hay aquí.
Huevos.
Can you hear it?
Huevos. ¿Cuántos hay?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
14.
14. En un caja papano de pollitos.
Oh, en una caja para tapar los pollitos. ¿Y los pollitos acá van a tener a su mamá o solo pollitos? Solo pollitos. ¿Y los vas a agarrar en tu mano?
Sí.
Sí. Y, ajá.
Nadie me pone el suelo, de nadie me dará y pone aquí.
Oh, tú lo vas a agarrar y lo vas a poner allí. Para que se quede allí y no le pase nada al pollito.
Va a estar comida para
¿Comida?
worms.
¿Oh, sí?
Dale uno y pone allí y
Oh, así va a comer. ¿Quieres que te la lea?
Sí.
Dice, querida familia, tenemos huevos, dice, tenemos huevos, estamos esperando que se quiebren. Y después, ¿cómo le va a hacer el pollito cuando salga del cascarón, del huevito? Ok, Andy. Ay, ahora mamá ya sabe cómo nacen los pollitos.
That was a lot of language, right? Now let's see what happens when we see the teachers working with the children, and how much language do we see from the children when the teacher is doing the talking.
What happened to the other chicks?
They're crying.
They were crying. Who were they crying for?
Mommy and
Mommy and Daddy. So what did your teacher do?
Take them back to the farm.
Yeah, I took them back to the farm. That's where they needed to go. So today I will take the other 3 chicks back to the farm. You ready for this one? Which one is bigger?
The black one.
Oh, I guess they're really hungry. Yeah. Here's your lunch. Here's your lunch. You can come and eat. Wow. Did he flutter?
Yeah.
Wow, he fluttered. He didn't really fly, but he fluttered with his 2 wings. Peck, 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 peck. Is this one like their farmhouse now?
Yeah.
Maybe they should get used to that. Baby chicks are crying.
Pee-oh, pee-oh, pee-oh.
Mama, we are hungry. Mama, we are cold. There you go. Will that keep them in? Kind of. They need more fences on their farm.
Okay. So what did you think of that video? What did you think about the mom and what you saw when the teacher was working with the children? If you have any comments, you can just put them right in the chat box. And let's see. I just think that video really shows how powerful and valuable those learning conversations are when the school partners with the family and sends home this great information that really supports those two-way conversation, and the mom and the child learn together. Those are all great things. And then the teacher provided a lot of new words and new experiences, but you could see when the teacher's doing more talking, there's less coming from the children. And hopefully, if we visited that classroom, we would see the teacher taking a step back and letting the children have more conversations with each other. So is there anything you want to add to that, Sonia, or a question?
No, I would just say that. No, lo que resalta el video es la importancia que tiene esto de conversar con los niños. Y quizás, lo que dice Karen, quizás la madre lo hizo mejor que la maestra, porque la maestra habló quizás demasiado y los niños tuvieron menos oportunidad de hablar. Y la idea es que ellos hablen, ¿verdad? No tanto los adultos, pero que ellos hablen. Entonces, nada, eso es la importancia del video, es que vemos que los niños aprovechan de estas conversaciones que tienen con los adultos y entonces hablan más.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
And so you see, I have links for 2 videos here. We only have time to watch one, but I wanted to make sure that you have access to the other video as well. So when you get the resources later, you'll be able to see this in the recording. And that is the end of my presentation, my opportunity to share with you 5 secrets from the research and 5 really fun ways that families and educators and families and educators together can work to support the early language development of young children that gets them off to the greatest, most successful start as a bilingual learner. So thank you so much. I have a minute for questions before you go back to your next session. Does anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment before we go?
There's no questions yet. There are thank yous expressed.
Okay.
So thank you for sharing this great information.
Okay.
If I can say, as someone who also has researched this and has worked on this and as a teacher, this was excellent information, Karen. Thank you so much. To provide us with information that's based on research, I think is absolutely so important, right? So thank you so much for that. Somebody else said, learned a lot, gracias. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I wish I knew this information when my boys were little.
We're all learning. We're all learning now. We're all learning in new ways, and it's really pretty exciting for families, for teachers, for grandmothers like me, for college professors. We all have a lot to learn together, and we could all help each other. So thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the Institute.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Gracias.